What is up, guys? Welcome to the Edge DFS. My name is Tyson Smith, joined by Ellie Hernandez. Ellie, we got Showdown, man. Monday Night Football's back. XFL edition. We got a good matchup, man. This is probably one of the most hyped matchups of the season for XFL. We got the Houston Roughnecks going into DC, going up against the Defenders. Defenders are undefeated. Houston's 4-1. This should be one hell of a matchup. I think this will be a defensive struggle, but we're going to get into that here in a minute. First off, today we're recording this on Sunday night, so the Brahmas and the Arlington Renegades played today. And hey, we gotta shout out one of our guys from the Discord, Scottradamus. First place, chopped it with one other person, but got 6.25K with a very interesting lineup. Brahmas captain, both running backs, both defenses, and both kickers. And it shipped it. It's incredible, man. We've had some good wins on Showdown this season, man. I know we've been doing main slate shows. We've been profitable with main slate, obviously. But when it comes to the big contests, I shipped one earlier this year. Scottradamus shipped a pretty good one here. What do you think about this, man? How did you do today overall? And hey, good for him, man, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Buddy Scotty was on the main slate show last week. It's good to see him pull one in. Shout him out again. Looks like he's doing pretty okay in the mini max as well. Look, I profited on Showdown this afternoon. I still think there's a decent amount of money to be made here, right? As we see, and we'll discuss more as we get into this slate here, it's just the ownership is just so concentrated still. I mean, even on main slate, like on the Battlehawks, you had Shepard with 10% ownership.
Yeah.
You got guys out here getting 40, 50, 60% ownership, and you're not playing guys that are getting touchdowns. So look, this is smart. You got you got the defensive touchdown, and then you just stacked up a shit show, and that's what it turned out to be, man. Good job, Scott.
Yeah. I mean, like things like today, like we knew Slaughter was on a short leash. Like we knew he probably wasn't going to play all game. And this is what I took advantage of earlier in that DC versus Vegas, where Perez was like 60, 70% owned. Slaughter was like 60+% owned in this game. I mean, we knew Plitt was going to come in, and the funny thing about it was there was only really one quarterback in the player pool. For the Brahmas, because we had Benkert coming in and he wasn't even on the slate. So there's an edge to be had. That's why we're doing this show. I think this is a good opportunity. I think the contest will fill for this from Monday night. So I really feel like there's if you get bold, and there's one player that I think is going to be the highest owned or close to the highest owned that we could fade in this matchup. If you get bold, I think it's worth it. I really do think so. Let's look at our first look for this matchup. So obviously Houston going into DC, there's a little bit of potential for rain, and I'll show you the chart here in a minute, but I think we'll be okay. But obviously everything changes. We're recording this night before. A lot of things can change on the day. But Defenders are minus 155 on the money line. This is a 42-point total, and they're 3-point favorites. What is your thought here? Like, which team do you think is better overall? Do you think, like, I kind of thought that the Defenders were a little overrated, but I'm starting to think that they are the best team. What do you think here?
Yeah, man, I hate to just agree with you on everything so far. I know we're only like 2 or 3 takes in, but look, dude, you're right on. We talk about it on in NFL Showdown all the time. What do you do when you have young quarterbacks? You run the ball effectively and you play good defense. And in a league where you just have a bunch of shit teams, like it's a lot of skill required to be a throwing quarterback, right? And to throw in an offense, there's a lot to learn. And some of these, we saw it live, some of these games that the play callers aren't even getting the plays in time for the quarterbacks to do anything. So these guys like to run the ball, man. I think DC is the favorite just because of their defense and how often they run the ball. The ability to control how much a team scores is just, it's important.
Yeah,
we'll see that tomorrow, I think.
The funny thing here is Houston is not going to run the ball. We've openly heard AJ Smith say, "Fuck running. I'm not doing this." Guys like Borgie, he's a good play, but he's very touchdown dependent and PPR dependent. He's going to have to get involved in the pass game, and if he does get any running, stats that will really help, he's got to punch one in near the goal line, most likely. The funny thing is, the defenders, they're going to run the ball a ton. You've got Abram Smith. Looks like we got Raquel Armstead coming back. That should be healthy for this game, and you got two quarterbacks, Jordan Ta'amu and De'Ara King, that all four of these guys can score rushing touchdowns. So it's very interesting, the differences between these teams offensively, but defensively, they seem like they're both very, very solid. These are probably the two best defenses in the league, both stats-wise, just football-wise, and fantasy points-wise. Let's look at this weather breakdown here. So the game's at 7 p.m. Eastern. As you can see, it looks like the weather starts to, trail off. It looks like as we kick it off, we could see a little bit of rain, and then it could sort of transition into being dry, but we just don't know yet. So if it does rain, we've seen plenty of DC Defender games with rain. We know what happens. We know they get a huge advantage. If this game does rain, I think you got to take DC in the run game big time over Houston passing the ball without their best wide receiver. What do you think about this rain, and how much are you thinking about this? How much are you waiting to kind of see how this plays out before you start really, really building?
I don't think it's going to impact my build too much. I'm already kind of leaning towards DC anyways. But if it is really, really windy and rainy, then I think you can start thinking about potentially fading Brandon Silvers. He's going to be 65% owned, and he's going to throw the ball 35 times in shitty conditions. We've seen the weather impact these guys pretty significantly, man. Yeah. So I don't know. It does open a little interesting fade discussion, I think.
All right, so let's get into our injuries here. We've already kind of talked about one guy.
Yeah, just pain. It was pain everywhere.
So Raquel Armstead just got the injury report before we went on the show. Looks like everybody is good to go for DC. Everybody's probable. Now, obviously, still keep an eye on those inactives. We could get a surprise inactive or something. You could see a tight end that's inactive that, not that we're really super interested in tight ends for DC, but just keep an eye on that. It usually comes out about an hour before lock. Join the Discord. We're obviously in there. We're adjusting to news. If you don't have time to do all this research, well, that's why you're watching the show. But also jump in as a companion piece to this show. Jump into that Discord. It's really important. Jontre Kirkland is out for the year. That's really unfortunate. What does this do for Houston's offense? I think it makes a huge deal. We saw them struggle last week against Seattle. I don't know how much you could attribute to Kirkland being out for that. He injured himself on the first drive. I think you can attribute a lot to it. With a week of practice here, guys like Justin Smith filling in for Kirkland. Obviously, you have Burnett, you have Cedric Byrd, you have a lot of dudes on this team. Everybody, basically every pass catcher that's active for Houston, I'm kind of interested in. So what do we do with Jontre Kirkland being out? He took a lot of volume up. It seems to me like a lot of people are just going to automatically go to Smith at a very low salary. But I think that Burnett could be lower owned than he should be, being the number one wide receiver on a team that passes a lot, right?
Yeah, I think we see some of this happen in the NFL where people see that a number 2 is out or something along those lines, and even at number 1, and they just start jamming in who they think is going to be the replacement. But I think there's other guys that we can look to here. And you're right on Burnett. He could obviously see a significant boost to his overall target share. I mean, we're talking about a pretty significant drop off, right? Like, I don't know. And Cedric Byrd, I think, is a guy that we can get into a little bit, right? He's a guy that we've already seen established in his role. So I think that's a little bit safer than maybe playing what appears to be a chalky Justin Smith. And again, we've seen from this offense that they're going to spread it out a little bit too. They have decent targets to several guys on this team. So once again, I think we just got to avoid the trap of just locking all of our ownership into the highest projected guys or the highest chalk guys, and really find guys that we're comfortable with in a good game script. I think
it's so true, man. Like these guys that are coming in extremely high owned, there's always that thought about, man, if we're playing NFL Showdown, you got to have some of these dudes. You got to have exposure to them. There's no reason to fade them. When it comes to XFL, there is an absolute reason to fade them because how many times this year, not even this year, just this week and last week, have we seen like 50, 60% owned dudes on main slate get 2 fantasy points or not even suit up after being confirmed in or whatever. There's so much of this going on. That's why, look, there's no sharks playing this because there's not a lot of information out there. That's why I think the edge is there. I think the risk is worth it, especially for a game like this, man. I think it's absolutely worth it. Let's get into this breakdown. Break it down. All right, so we're going to go position by position here. Should be a relatively quick show. We'll get into our captains, we'll get into our lineup builds, and then our final thoughts. Throw us a subscribe. We're going to stick with this, man. I understand that some people are falling off when it comes to XFL. We're not doing showdown shows every slate. It just kind of depends. But we are doing the main slate show every single week. Stick with us. We're going to be here all the way through the championship game. We're doing every single week here on XFL. So hit that subscribe button and throw us a like. I'd love to look. There's probably not going to be a lot of people watching this. It's okay. It's all good. But just throw us a like. We really appreciate that. It really helps us out. It really encourages us. All right. So Brandon Silvers is 10.6K. Jordan Ta'amu is 8,600. Derek King is 8K. And then Cole McDonald at 6K. We got to talk about a guy like Cole McDonald on a slate like this. Brandon Silvers is expensive, but I think you just got to get some exposure to him. But if there's 2 dudes on this slate that I think could fail and could win you some money if you didn't play them, it would be Brandon Silvers and a guy like Abram Smith. I think Brandon Silvers is a better play, and I don't think I'm going to get too crazy. I'm going to play him in most of my lineups. But hey, look, he's going up against a tough defense. In my opinion, this defense will give up pass yards and will give up pass opportunities. So I think I'm sticking with a guy like Brandon Silvers in most of my lineups. What are you doing here, man? Like, I don't think salary is as important as it usually is. We can leave money on the table. We're going to look at an optimal lineup that, based on projections, leaves like 3K on the table. I still think you can't get too fancy in a game like this because the best players are going to most likely go off. What do you think about Brandon Silvers?
Yeah, man, I like Brandon Silvers. I'm still kind of in league with you. I think Abram Smith is kind of the guy that I'm going to be fading. He was just projected to be chalk this weekend. He's probably going to be in chalk on man slate. He's going to be chalky as hell on the showdown show. And you really can't fade both guys. So I will have a decent amount of Brandon Silvers, but I think there's some discussion to be had about, maybe fading him in a few lineups and taking some of the highest scoring pieces. Maybe it's a Burnett game where he has 150 yards and 3 touchdowns. You may not need Silvers because you got Burnett or whatever. So I think there's worlds you can do that, but I'm not going to have much Smith. So I think I'm going to have a decent amount of Brandon Silvers.
Yeah. And so look, what are your thoughts here on Ta'amu and Derek King? Because look, Derek King is 8K. He's priced up a little bit more than, last week. I think he was right around that price, but he's gotten more expensive every week because the guy leads the team in touchdowns. He's got 5 rushing touchdowns. We know he's going to get involved in the red zone. That's basically, look, if the guy gets you like 10 snaps in a game, they're probably going to run the ball 9 of those times. And all 9 of those times, there's a potential that he could score on those plays. So Derek King is a very boom bust type guy, but people are a little bit scared to play him at 8K when Ta'amu, who's going to be on the field most of the time, and he's going to throw the ball most of the time, is only $600 more expensive. So any interest in playing these guys together, look, hey, that 15K lineup I got earlier this year in that showdown slate, I played both of these dudes together with Abram Smith the captain. I don't know that this is a situation where I want to do that again with both of these quarterbacks. What do you think here, man? Where are you leaning? How much Derek King are you interested in getting? You have to get some. Right?
Yeah, so for showdown, I don't think we need to see Derek King as even a quarterback. We should just be considering him as RB2 or goal line running back in this situation. He's got 20 attempts on the year, 5 touchdowns. So we know where he's getting his work. It's very important situation. So I kind of disagree with you though. I do think this is an interesting slate to to actually play him pretty significantly. I think you can run a handcuff. I think you should probably just run your lineup back, to be honest with you. I think this is a great way game to do this for. And instead of Abram Smith at captain, though, I think you can actually run some lineups with Derek King captain. This is a good opportunity for him to get a touchdown or two. I just expect them to, play it safe on the goal line. And I don't think Abram Smith's going to have another 3 touchdown game. So that's where Derek King gets his volumes, when they get on the goal line. So I like both these guys. I'm gonna have handcuffs. I'm gonna have some lineups where I maybe even fade Tamu and just play Derek King and hope that it works out.
I was watching the XFL Today show, or whatever it's called, on ESPN Plus before the game today, and they brought up that Derek King, his over/under for touchdowns was 1.5. That's pretty interesting. That means, that means that he's probably going to get an opportunity to score a touchdown, most likely. So 1.5 over/under for touchdowns, rushing touchdowns. That's a very interesting stat. That kind of perked my ears up a little bit and go, wow, this guy probably is going to score a touchdown in this game. Speaking of that, I was watching that show also, and they brought up Cole McDonald getting more involved with this offense as a runner, and probably getting a couple more snaps than he typically would, just to add some, dynamic element to this offense. And Cole McDonald is a guy that at 6K, everybody's going to be focused on Derek King getting those rushing opportunities in near the goal line and in the red zone. I think Cole McDonald can also do that as well. You got any interest in Cole McDonald? Hey, would you ever run a 4 quarterback lineup?
Sure. I mean, why not, man? Like, if Cole McDonald's going to get a goal line carry or two and it gets a touchdown at 6K, like that might be exactly what we need. You know what I mean? So maybe this is the one where you do 4 quarterbacks and 2 defenses.
You're a psychopath. I'm all about it, though. That would be very interesting. All right, let's go to running back. So Abram Smith is, sorry, let me sort by salary here. That'd be a little bit easier. Abram Smith is 9,200. Max Borgi is 9K. Bryson Aline, 5,600. Raquel Armstead is at 4,400. He's pretty cheap. This is an opportunity, man. If Raquel Armstead can come out strong and get you some of those, in the passing game, and maybe get you 50, 60 rushing yards, and and punch one in, 4,400, you're going to need him. Nick Hawley is obviously not a running back. We all know that, but for some reason he's on every single slate as a running back. He's 2,200. So what do we do here, man? Clearly, DC is going to run the ball a lot. Abram Smith is going to be 70, 80% owned, probably. I'm just guessing. Look, man, if you just don't play him in a handful of lineups, depending on what you're doing, if you're playing like one lineup in the big contest, I would suggest not playing Abram Smith. And, you're probably going to lose that lineup anyways, so you might as well get a ton of leverage. I love Abram Smith. I'm waiting to get a jersey and frame it right here because he was my captain for that big win. But in this situation at 9,200 with that high ownership, going up against a pretty damn good rush defense, you got to think about it, right?
Yeah, man. Look, he's 70 to 80%. It's just an easy fade for me, man. 9,200. He needs 100 and a touchdown. If you're at captain, he needs 102 touchdowns, maybe more, to pay it off. And I just feel like the field's going to be chasing a little bit. He should be closer to 40-45% owned, like what we would expect Max Borgi to be owned at, right? They're so similar to Abram Smith and Max Borgi. Like, I understand the attempts aren't there when it comes to Max, whereas the targets are. He's got 80 plus targets on the season. So for him to come in twice as owned as Max Borgi, it's just a little crazy to me. I think you should play a little bit more Max Borgi in that case, right? What if this turns into more of like a CMC situation, and instead of just feeding all these backup wide receivers, they're just going to target Burnett and Borgi because they know that it works. So I think there's a real reason to get a little bit more exposure to Borgi. I'm not saying go get like 90, 50, 100%, but I think he's an interesting captain, and I think he's an interesting flex play, just really as a pivot off of Abram Smith, kind of double down on the fade.
Yeah, because everybody's going to play Abram Smith. Everybody's going to play both quarterbacks. There might not be enough room for a guy like Borgi on a lot of your builds. I think he'll be under 20% owned. which in my opinion, like if you flash back to like week 2 or 3 and you told me that, I'd be like, you're crazy. Like what happened to him? Nothing happened to him. He's just not being utilized as much. And he got hurt. Remember, he got hurt a few weeks ago. He still got a touchdown last week. Like he's still putting up numbers. So Borgie for me is a guy that you should probably target because he gets involved in the pass game. And I know he's not going to get a lot of rushing attempts, but this is a guy that's going to get heavily involved. Are you interested in a guy like Bryson Aline? Actually, I should probably throw up Dejon Lee. The only reason I took him out is because he's 7,200, and he's the kind of guy that we saw him fill in for Max Borghi when he was out. He's the kind of guy that's going to get the rushing attempts. So if Borghi sits, he's going to get the first, second down attempts on the ground, and probably maybe Aline comes in for third down. What are your thoughts on these backups? I don't think you need to really touch them. Maybe Bryson Aline a little bit, maybe like 5% or something. What do we do with these backups?
To be honest, I'm really not all that interested. They're priced a little bit out of my price range, and I just would rather play some of the backup wide receivers if I'm looking at anything in that range, even cheaper.
All right, so any interest in Nick Hawley here? He has scored one touchdown this year. He's 2,200. I think there's probably better value out there, like cheaper dudes that I'd be willing to play.
Yeah, I think there's cheaper dudes that I'm willing to play. And with salary really not being that much of an issue because of some of the value that we have, I just don't know I'll be getting to much of them.
All right, so let's go to our wide receivers. All right, so Deontay Burnett, 9,600. Travell Harris, 7,400. Cedric Byrd, 5K. And then you got the flavor of the week, Justin Smith at 3,600. I think Justin Smith is a great option. He had 15 fantasy points last week in absence of Kirkland. But he's gonna be popular. He's 3,600. He's a good price. To me, he kind of feels like being in the same situation as Willis from Seattle. Yesterday? It's a risk in my opinion. Justin Smith could put up a 0. He could put up 3 fantasy points. He could put up 20, and I don't think there's any in between. In my opinion, he's a risk, and his ownership is so high that I think if you played Cedric Byrd in some of your lineups, you can get a lot of leverage and you can get a lot higher floor. Maybe the thing with Cedric Byrd is, look, he leads the team in receptions, but he's just not getting in the end zone. So that's what kind of hurts you. And it seems like Justin Smith is the kind of guy that can score you multiple touchdowns in a game. So where do we go here with these wide receivers? Like, I think Travell Harris is going to be forgotten about too, because Byrd and Justin Smith are kind of trendy right now. I think that a guy like Travell Harris gets forgotten about, and Deontay Burnett at 9,600, he might be one of these other guys that you just can't fit in, just similar to Borgie, right?
Right. So, look, that's one of the reasons why I think you should target a little bit of Deontay Burnett. Like, I don't think you're getting to these guys if you're playing Abram Smith in all your lineups. If not, I think you have the salary to pay for these guys and think that Houston can keep it a little bit competitive. Get Brandon Silvers and Borgie, get Brandon Silvers and Burnett, and then stack up with DC in the defense or something. But yeah, I mean, especially if these guys are going to come in lower owned than the rest of the field, there's still some of the better players on the field. So we were talking about 7,200 Dejon Lee, right? I'd rather just pay up $200 and get to Travell Harris.
Oh yeah,
because again, these are guys we're seeing ownership concentrate on these names. We know where everybody's going to go so far, and to your point, you're only going to be able to play a certain amount of guys. So these guys are going to come in 5 to 10% owned, but that's Travell Harris has 1 touchdown and 80 yards at 10% ownership. Immediately you're cashing in your lineup. Like you're doing solid. And then to really answer your question, I think an interesting pivot off of Justin Smith is even to go down to where is he at? 1,800 Ben Putman. Dude has 17 targets on the season. He's still going to get involved in the offense, right? Like I like him. I think he's a decent option in 1,800, and we're not necessarily looking for a bunch of value, right? So I don't think that he's going to get played that much. You're going to have the ability to go up to probably Justin Smith. And again, I can't justify playing Justin Smith 5 times more often than I play Ben Putman. They're
Yeah.
both in similar spots, all things considered.
Look, Justin Smith could be one of these guys that takes over and becomes a mainstay every single week that we play fantasy. We just need to see it happen. I don't know. We saw one game with him, and just as easily he could put up a 3 fantasy point output at a high ownership, and immediately you're just like you're good to go. You know, you're really good to go. All right, let's look at DC's wide receivers. So look, there's not a ton of volume here when it comes to DC in the pass game. But look, they still pass the ball. Like, Ta'amu is probably going to throw the ball 17, 18, 20 times, depending on how the game goes. For whatever reason, Josh Hammond is priced up to 7,600. He's the most expensive pass catcher. Ellie, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the numbers are backing up on the season that Lucky Jackson and Chris Blair are kind of the go-to guys here. Am I right about that?
Yeah, man. Lucky Jackson's got the most targets on the team at 29 with 19 receptions. And again, he's just priced much better, right? Like, I don't know, man. I'm going to have a lot more Lucky Jackson than I do Josh Hammond. And then Christian Blair has 16 targets. So he does have fewer targets than Josh Hammond at 24. Josh Hammond's just not converting. He has 14 receptions on 24 targets.
Yeah. And Ezard, this is interesting. Now, I'm not super interested in Ezard, but if you wanted to get really weird in the big contest, stack Ezard with DC defense, and you can get a weird stack double touchdown sort of output. Jaquez Ezard, he was coming into the year, crazy enough, the dude was like the #1 projected wide receiver, and we all lost money playing him week 1. But now I think at 4,200 he's gonna be like 5% owned. You stick him in as a potential guy that can run back a kick, and get you six fantasy points. I don't know. It's probably a galaxy brain type thing, but you can't sleep on really anybody in this game. Lucky Jackson to me at 5,400 is in that prime spot. What was it, 2 weeks ago? I think 2 weeks ago, Lucky Jackson had 10 fantasy points in the first quarter, and then they just forgot he existed. And the reason why I vividly remember that is because I needed 6 more points out of him to ship a 20K. It just didn't work out, which, is fine. But Lucky Jackson is a guy that seems to be getting involved in batches. Like, they have design plays for him. That's what I feel like is going on. Maybe the OC is scripting plays for him in the first quarter, or scripting plays for Chris Blair or whoever, and then they kind of base their looks and they kind of see what's going on, and then they adjust. That's the only thought I have as to why Lucky Jackson would score 10 fantasy points in the first quarter and then not even get targeted in the second half. Are you scared about Lucky Jackson? Is that just am I just jaded and snake bitten because that happened? Because I could have won some serious money there. I still like Lucky Jackson, right?
Yeah, I think it's fine. I mean, he's 5,400, so it's not as big of a deal if he doesn't get there. You know what I mean? If he has 7 to 10 points, if he has a 10-point game at 5,400, I don't think you're dead on this slate. So that's fine, right? Lucky Jackson's fine. I think you have a right to be pissed at him, though. He owes you a beer.
Last thing, Deontay Burnett, I really think putting him at captain is essential. Throw him at captain, because he's the type of guy that can go off for 2 touchdowns. And he's the kind of guy that you might need a captain just to cash in a game like this, which I think the under will hit. I think this is going to be more of a defensive battle. And a guy that can potentially score 2 touchdowns, to me, is you got to get your fair share of captain with him, because I don't think he's going to be properly owned at captain as he should be based on his upside. All right, so tight end, I don't know, dude. Ethan Wolf is the starter. He probably will play. He's been out for a few weeks. He gets involved a little bit. What does he have? He's is he 3rd or 4th in the team? It's hard to tell now because he's missed a few games, but he's getting involved. I think he has 1 touchdown on the year. Bariley Moore, McKinney at 1,400. I'm not really interested in him if Ethan Wolf starts. He's 1K, and then you got Garrett Owens. You got this dude's wearing number 21, I think. He looks like an oversized halfback playing tight end at 1K. I'm not super interested in any of these tight ends, but if I had to pick, Ethan Wolf would probably be the guy if he plays, and then Garrett Owens after that. But you're talking about like 5% exposure to these guys. I'm not getting too heavily into these dudes, right?
Yeah, these guys you're interested in, 150 max, maybe if you're crazy in a 20 max. Ethan Wolf, I do think has some viability. He's got 11 targets on the season. Who knows what to do with him? Again, DC doesn't like to pass the ball, so I think you're really kind of just taking a risk not taking one of their primary route runners, to be honest.
And look, in my opinion, something weird here is the best opportunities for these guys to hit the optimal lineup is in the red zone. So, like, if you're stacking Derek King, if you're putting Derek King at captain and you're looking for value, maybe throw Ethan Wolf in the flex. You know, maybe Derek King does a little, a little fake run, like Tim Tebow pass up over the line to Ethan Wolf for a touchdown. That would be kind of the only thing I'd be looking for to if I'm hand building to kind of get him in there. All right, so kickers. Look, we got to talk about kickers here. I keep bringing this up, Roto Grinders and some of these other sites, sometimes they don't even have the kickers listed. Like, they're not even projected. They don't even have them listed. They're 1K, dude. I know you're not getting extra points. I totally get it. But in a game like today, where it was a field goal fest, these dudes can kick 50-plus yarders. It's possible. I know it's going to be potentially raining. I know there could be a little bit of wind or whatever. It's not going to be perfect weather. But in a defensive struggle type game, if this was NFL and we had a lower total, we'd be all over these kickers. But for whatever reason, we're just not super interested. These guys are gonna be like 5% owned. Matt McCrane's 1K, Hunter Duplessis is 1K. I think you got to get a little bit of exposure to these guys, especially after we're seeing that they kind of matter in some of these games, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think both kickers are in play here. I think kind of the rule of thumb is if the game matters, you can expect a team to take points unless it's a risky situation. So I do expect both these offenses to take points. They're both kind of in the playoff hunt. DC's obviously undefeated, whatnot, and so it matters. And then we saw our boy Scott take it down. Would you have both kickers?
Yeah, both
again,
kickers.
It matters. It really does matter. And on a slate like this, I do think both these guys are in play. I don't think you need to run both tomorrow night, though.
No. I don't think you do, and I don't think you need to prioritize them. But if you're if you're doing a 20 max or something, maybe get 5% each of these guys or 10% each if you're feeling frisky. All right, defense. So in my opinion, defenders at 4,600, Roughnecks at 3,400. I'm going to be all over these defenses. I don't know if I'm playing like a ton of captain defenses. If this is the NFL, these, $4,600 defense that's going to be probably relatively owned, I'm probably not touching. But this is the XFL, man. Like, there's turnovers left and right. Players are making mistakes. There's most likely going to be multiple sacks in this game. There's going to be turnovers. We've seen it. These defenses are good. I think the defenses on each side of the ball are better than the opposing offenses. And I think in a situation like this hits the under, and I think that there's potential for a scoop and score or a pick six. And if you don't have a defense in a situation like that, in a lower scoring game, you are screwed. You're not even going to min cash. So, yes, is there a situation where I see this game could be a slight shootout? Maybe. In my opinion, man, defenders defense, Roughnecks defense. Roughnecks defense at $1,200 cheaper, though, is very, very interesting. Where are you going with these defenses?
Yeah, I like both these defenses. Roughnecks, they lead the league in sacks at 19, and the defenders are second with 17. And then coming into this week, I think there's been a total of 5 defensive touchdowns. It's coming into this week. I know we saw a couple. And 4 or 3 have come from the Roughnecks and the defenders. So that's 60% there. Both these teams have the ability to scoop and score or make a pick six. So yeah, both defenses are in play. Again, I think you should really think about just running that lineup back with someone else captain.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at this graphic, it's a little bit hard to see. If you guys want a copy of this, you can jump into Discord and just download it. But look, the Roughnecks, we talked about this going into that Seattle game. They haven't really been tested against good offenses. Seattle came out and look, they weren't dominant. Seattle's offense was not dominant. Their defense did a better job than their offense, I think. But some of these numbers are slightly skewed when you play Orlando twice and when you play the Renegades and the Brahmas. Excuse me. But if you look at their scoring, when it comes to fantasy points for their defenses, they're both averaging 12.2 fantasy points per game. I mean, that's pretty incredible. Both offenses are giving up a little bit more to the pass game, but neither of these teams give up a lot of run yards. They have not allowed 100 yards in any game this year. The Defenders did give up 98 yards against the Battlehawks last week. But look, man, like this is kind of interesting. Like there's plenty of turnovers to be had. And for me, I'm targeting defenses more so than the field in this particular matchup. All right, so let's get to our Crown the Rest segment. This is our favorite captain for DraftKings.
Now, if you want to crown them, then crown their ass.
Ellie, you're going Borgie, which is interesting. I like it. I think that there's probably not going to be a ton of ownership coming his way. He's not as sexy as he was earlier this year. For me, Burnett, same reason. You're paying up slightly to be different because we know that Abram Smith is going to be high owned, and we know that both quarterbacks are probably going to be relatively high owned. So there's going to be not going to be a ton of room for these guys at captain if you want to have a balanced lineup. What do you think here, man? Borgie, man, what needs to happen with Borgie for him to be the optimal captain?
I mean, he just needs to soak in some of that Jonte Kirkland volume. We know that he's going to get involved in the pass game. He's getting a decent amount of targets on the air. He's I think at 19 on the season. So we know that he gets involved in the passing game. He has to see that boost, and that's really what I'm kind of betting on here. And I know on the next slide, I don't know why it didn't click when I was sending you the message, but I think one of the points here is you're also getting a leverage over Abram Smith, who's going to probably be the chalkiest captain on the slate, right? It's more of kind of like a double down on that. I just don't think that he's going to pay it off. I think Borgie is a better play just blindly, right? Like you wouldn't see two $9,200 guys coming in the same game and then just expect it to be 4-1 ownership or 3-1 along those lines. So I that's kind of where I'm at. I think you can get maybe 5 to 10% GPP. Don't need to be crazy, but he is a good GPP captain.
Look, at the end of the day, if Borgie gets 3 little screen passes for 0 yards, that's 3 fantasy points. And Abram Smith has to rack up 30 yards on the ground because he's just not going to get involved in the pass game. So I just feel like Borgie has a higher floor and potential ceiling against this Roughnecks defense, just simply because look, I don't see Abram Smith, busting out a 75-yard run. Now it's possible. I'm going to have exposure to him, but if you had to choose one dude to fade, which we're going to talk about right now,
we couldn't do diddly poo.
It's probably got to be Abram Smith, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I know earlier coming into the show, I wasn't sure who I was going to fade, but just the amount of ownership that's projected to come into this guy is kind of crazy, man. And he's got to pay off that price tag at that ownership. Like he has to. Otherwise, you're dead.
Recency bias. Look, I'm all about it. I love Abram Smith. Don't get me wrong, but my point here is, how many times, if you ran 1,000 simulations, how many times does he just get you 75 rush yards and no touchdowns? It probably happens like a halfway decent amount of time. So if I could get immediate leverage over like 60% of the field by just an average output and then put that into Borgie or put that into Burnett, who get those PPR upsides, that's kind of what I'm thinking. All right, let's get to our lineup build. We appreciate you guys. Throw us a like, subscribe. If you want to join that Discord, if you're watching on your TV or your computer, you can just scan that QR code down below. If you're watching on your phone, just hit the description, go down, hit join Discord. It'll take you into that. It's free. And look, there's a lot of leverage to be had. We're all in there talking as we get up to lock for every single game. I'm putting out some stats. Ellie's got his whole stat sheet in there. He's got an Excel sheet that's free that has all the stats compiled because there's just not a lot of those options out there right now when it comes to XFL. So if you want that information, jump in the Discord, say hi to us, and hang out. We appreciate you. So let's build a lineup together. Actually, first, let me just hit optimize and see what it does. So there it is. Abram Smith, the captain, Justin Smith, Cedric Bird, Lucky Jackson, Brandon Silvers, and Jordan Ta'amu. Look at how much salaries left on the table, though. $3K. I don't think you need to get as crazy as Scott Stradamus did and kind of like what we all did today at like leaving like 20,000 on the table. I don't think that that's necessary. But, you know, a couple thousand on the table, build the best lineup, in your opinion. And that's why I think hand building for Showdown has a little bit of an advantage over optimizing, because it's just going to stick the highest. These projections don't really matter that we're getting, you know, as good as these sites are, as hard as they work, you know, some more than others. They're just not going to get it right, because we have so many issues. We have such high variance just with even just the starting players. Like, we don't even know some of these, you know, if Abram Smith came out and ran, you know, only got 40% of the snaps because he had a toe issue in practice that they didn't talk about, no one would ever know. Like, similar to Ellison issues that we've had this year. How many times have we seen a dude that's been active and healthy, supposedly, come out and not even start the game? Not saying that's going to happen here, but my point is hand build lineups if you're going into some of these bigger contests. That's just my thought on it. All right, let's build a lineup together here. Let's build a couple. So where do you want to start, dude? Do you want to start with some of the chalkier guys and kind of figure out how those builds are going to go, or do you want to just get right into our favorites?
Let's start with the cash build, because I'm really going to be fading a lot of Abram Smith, so we may as well just start with building one that we're comfortable in playing with a single entry. The problem is I also I guess we can have a quick discussion then. Like, if Abram Smith comes in at 45% owned at captain, which I might be kind of crazy,
he's not.
But
he won't be.
What do you think he'll be? 20?
I think he'll be 15 to 20% owned at captain, and I think he'll be around the highest. I think that both quarterbacks will be, you know, 12 to 15%, and then guys like lower price guys like Justin Smith and maybe, you know, like Cedric Birds will be in the 7 to 10% range. I'm just guessing.
Then let's build with Smith then at captain.
Yeah, let's do it. I think he'll come in as like the 1 or 2 highest owned captain, which to me doesn't make sense.
Let's just throw Silvers and Ta'amu in right off the bat.
All right. So we got about 5,600 a pop, and this is for like a cashy type build. If you're running smaller contests with higher dollar entries or single entries, where do we go now? We probably want to grab a guy like Cedric Bird right off the bat for a cash build.
Yeah, man. Like, I like Cedric Bird, and then I think we throw in defender's defense too.
Okay. Or one of these defenses. But yes, 7,400, dude. Look, you can do whatever you want on the slate, man. There's tons of opportunity here. Where does that put us? That puts us in a Travell Harris situation. So we like most of the builds that I'm seeing are coming in at like 3-3 builds.
So this is probably a good build if you're in like a $1 single entry where you have, you know, 25,000 entrants. Then Travell Harris is going to come in at what, you know, 10, maybe 12% owned, and the rest of this is pretty chalky.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, exactly. I mean, 7,400, you can do literally whatever you want here.
You probably want to go down to Lucky Jackson, probably.
Yeah.
You know, look, this is a 2-minute build that we did. I wouldn't be entering this if they had bigger like $220 contests like they do for the main slate. This is not the lineup I'm entering into that. But I think it's kind of close. So feel it out yourself. Figure out who you think is going to be some of the higher owned, and then see if you can maybe just flex off of one dude and get a little bit of an ownership leverage there. All right, so let's go into tournament builds here. You want to build with Borgie first?
Yeah, let's do Borgie, Silvers. And then I'm gonna get a little crazy here. Let's put in Ta'amu and De'Aaron King.
Love it.
And then let's put in DC defense.
Okay. 4,700.
4,700, man. I mean, you can put Justin Smith in. You can put in a Roughnecks defense. I mean,
Yep, you can.
I'll
do
probably
double
run a
defense.
couple of these. Ben Putman, even Ethan Wolf. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's just so many options here. Like you can do it. You could put in all the expensive dudes if you want. Let's do this with Borgie. Let's try to fit Abram Smith in here too. Let's try to fit in Justin Smith here. Leaves us with 4,500. Can't quite get the defender's defense, but look, you can go Reichwell Armstead. You can do you go down to Roughnecks defense. Or
can you go from Justin Smith down to Putnam?
Okay.
Sputnik. And then does that get us to Bird?
It sure does. It actually gets us to
Cole McDonald.
because this is Cole McDonald too.
Do it.
There you go, man. Lucky Jackson.
Yeah, there you go.
Look, I would suggest for this matchup, if you have, I haven't necessarily looked at the 20 maxes yet, but if you have $20 to play with in this game, don't put $15 into the big contest. Do a 20 max and just hand build 20 lineups. I think that's just the way to do it. Hand building is probably the way to go. All right, so Borgie, we can do whatever the hell we want with Borgie. Let's do a Burnett. He's a little bit more expensive. Let's put in Silvers, Teamu. I really don't think you have to get crazy because I think Teamu, unless he gets injured or unless they pull him out in the first quarter because they hate him, which he's the quarterback of an undefeated team. They're not doing that. I don't think you have to get crazy with these quarterbacks. I think you should probably just play them. In this situation, let's try to get Abram Smith here too. Or, you could obviously go Borgie here if you wanted. But let's go Abram Smith. Do you want to go Reichwell Armstead too?
Yeah, sure.
So Teamu, Abram Smith, Armstead. That's where most of your volume is coming in on this team. Minus Derek King. That's where it's mostly coming in for DC. So do we want to get a 4-2 here or do we want to do a 3-3? We got $2,800. Like there's a lot of options down in this low end range. We can do a field goal kicker if we wanted. We can leave a little bit on the table. There's Sputnik that you can grab. Sorry, scrolled up there. Sputnik, or any field goal kicker you want.
I think a field goal kicker probably it'd be pretty interesting for this lineup. Although, I mean, you can get all the rushing. Throw in the DC kicker. Like, that makes sense, right?
They don't have them.
Don't necessarily score a touchdown, but they rush for 1,000 yards. Oh yeah, they're unprojected.
They're unprojected. Hang on, where are they? What are their names? Hunter Duplessis. Let me just give him like 3 fantasy points, and Matt McCrane. That makes sense. You go. All right, so get that back. Kicker. Who did you want to put in?
The DC guy.
DC guy.
Matt McCrane.
Matt McCrane.
Yeah.
So leave a little bit on the table. Get weird, man. We've seen, how many times have we seen just weird ass builds, but they're well thought out. Like there's a reason. Like playing 3 quarterbacks in one lineup, or even 4 quarterbacks and a running back. Like it just all depends on what your game script is. You can do whatever you want. I mean, there's no reason to really go down to any of these like middle priced dudes. Like let's try like a Lucky Jackson lineup at captain and see what happens. So let's just try to jam in all the high priced guys. Let's get Silvers, Teamu, Abram Smith. Now we're gonna have to decide between Borgie and Burnett. Where do you want to go here?
Go Burnett.
Burnett, 3,900. Dude, I mean, it's just unlimited possibilities.
Justin Smith.
It's just unlimited possibilities. So,
save that one.
Yeah, save this one. Lineup. So, in this case, maybe you go from Burnett to Borgie, maybe, just to spread yourself out there a little bit. But I don't think it really matters, man. Like, there's so many options. Be sure that you guys jump into the Discord. Obviously, we'll be sharing some of the lineups that we build. Sorry, let me jump back over here. We'll be sharing some of the lineups that we build as we get closer to lock, just educational purpose-wise, just trying to feel things out. It's always nice to bounce things off of people. So, Ellie, what did you learn? I learned that you can do whatever the hell you want, right?
Yeah, man, pricing just isn't as tight as I thought it would be, and I think the XFL overall is reminding us that we just can't get caught up in our silos, right? Don't compartmentalize these players too much. Just because one guy is projected to be the best player on the slate doesn't mean he will be. Some fucking random dude could have 2 touchdowns and he's only going to be 5% owned. So, if your game script makes sense, just keep that in mind. Play the guy that's lower owned, it might work out.
Especially for Showdown, I really think that well thought out, story-based lineups that you're hand building is probably the best route. We've seen it happen. Like Scott Stradamus hand built that lineup specifically because he thought it was going to win. I hand built that other lineup that I did earlier because I'm like, this is the way to go. Like I know that it was the only lineup I built. It was a solo 15K. And we've seen that multiple times, like every single week, like hand building for these Showdown slates and telling a story with the lineups is just the best output. All right, Ellie, what is your prediction for this game here, man? Does it hit the over? Does it hit the under? And what's your score prediction?
Putting me on the fucking spot. Goddamn. I guess what's the total?
43, I think, ish.
Okay, I'll go with the under. I will go 22-17. That's 39. All right, cool.
I'm right there with you, man. I'm going like 22-18. We've seen that number pop up too many times this year. 22-18. I think it's a little bit more of a defensive struggle. And in my opinion, just like we've seen many times this year, this is a low-scoring first half. So if you can bet the unders on the first half, maybe do that. I think, in my opinion, look, let me ask you this. Who's your pick? Is it Sputnik as a low-owned dude that can score a touchdown? Like, where are you going when it comes to that?
Yeah, man, I think it's Sputnik. Ben Putman, Ben Skowronek's cousin. I don't know. Yeah.
Hey, I'm going Jaquez Ezzard to score a special teams touchdown in this game. Who knows, man? Who knows? I wish there was player props out there that we could bet on anytime touchdowns, because that would be fun. All right, we will see you guys. There's a Friday night game this week. I don't think we're going to do a Showdown slate for that, but we will be back for the main slate. Probably release that on Thursday sometime, probably in the morning or in the afternoon. So look out for that and hit subscribe. Join that Discord. We will see you guys later in the week for week 7.